even they don't aim so far out the back and off to one side. I don't know, I guess this would be good if you wanted to, I don't know. Okay. There. Okay, I guess a logical place might be somewhere over on that side of the barn. Back in there. Too badly. Okay. Gonna do one of these. And then, oh, that fertilizer spreader's almost done. I'm gonna look. Looks like I could use for the cattle, when I get cattle, I'm gonna need grass. And I'm also going to need either silage or hay. And then it has power food too. Okay, now. Get the windrower on and see what kind of a mess we can make with that. Okay. Oops. Looks like the course play is done. I'm gonna head over. I'm gonna just save this. Now, I'm going to take this. This is field 44. I want to do the same thing. I think I'm going to go around in about the same direction. I'm going to try something and just see if this can go up here and find the first waypoint. Yeah, let's just look. And that's how it's going to do it. It's going to go around one time and then go back and forth. Finish up here. And there she goes. And let's just go back and look and see, make sure it's fertilizing. It is. This. Zip this end right off. I grew up in a neighborhood with small farms, and they used a lot of old equipment, and most of the all of the farmers there had basically horse-drawn rakes that they had converted to use behind their tractors. And I can remember when one of the farmers in the neighborhood, you know, is a dairy farmer, he got what's known as a side delivery rake, and it went along and raked all of the hay together and did just what the name says. It turned it out to the side, and I just remember thinking what an amazing machine that was, because a horse-drawn rake, you actually had to get the hay in the tines, and you would pull it into a windrow, but you would pull it in from the side because that's the way the tines were made on the back, to just pull the hay in. And then when you got up even with the windrow with that rake, you would just they would usually have something like a rope that was hooked to the lever, because the old horse-drawn rakes, they had a seat on it, so a person could control the rake, and they'd also have reins to the horses, so they could hopefully control them too. But of course, with a tractor, sometimes people would have somebody ride on the rake, but most of the time, like I say, they would have something hooked up, like with ropes, to trigger that handle, so they could dump the windrow. the hay at the end of the windrow. So it was quite a complex procedure that way, and of course it was really slow because you had to keep going sideways. And what you did when you started, you would go across the field and decide where you wanted the windrow, and then that's where you would drop the hay. You know, when a person felt that they had big enough for a windrow, they'd drop the hay. Well, you probably can see that would be quite a complicated procedure to do that. It worked, and a lot of farmers had that old equipment around, but it sure wasn't as easy as with the new rake that one dairy farmer got. Probably it would have been somewhere in the mid-1950s. And what I always remember is that when it was turning, it apparently had something in the wheels that would release so that it wouldn't be turning the rake at the same rate, which of course you wouldn't want when you were turning, and it would click. It would just go click, 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 click. That's probably not a good imitation of it, but it was something like that. Got caught in the trees here around the house. Here we go. We got one bale. One bale for our cows. Back then, nobody had round balers. In fact, actually, some of the farmers there still handled the hay loose, and they would have a trailer, and there'd be, you know, one or two people on the ground, and they would pitch the hay up onto the trailer, and then the person on the trailer would move the hay around as need be, and they would try to pack it so they could get as much hay on the trailer as possible, and then they'd actually store it in the barns that way as loose hay. Now, all of the balers that any of the farmers had, the few farmers that had them, they were of course very small bale compared to today, and they were all the rectangular or what's known sometimes as a square baler. And then I never ran into round bales until it was sometime maybe in the early to mid 1970s. Now, I'm sure they've been around that longer than that, but I can remember, you know, in general, farmers were a bit skeptical because they were told that they could just keep these bales outside, and I think the figure people were given was that you'd only lose 10%. What would happen is, or was supposed to happen, is that the bale, essentially the outside part, would shed water, and a little bit of it would deteriorate, you know, because water would, of course, go into it. I mean, it wouldn't shed at all, but it would then protect the rest of the bale. And I think to a large degree that did occur. Better do one of these, as they say. But I think that I'll do this. There. I think actually they found out later there was maybe more spoilage than what they might have thought. And later on, a lot of people started building at least open barns, like a pole barn with a roof, to at least shed a lot of the water. And they just found that apparently they decided it was worth the extra money to build that barn to protect the hay. They'd get the value back in the hay over, a certain period of time. So that's what I know about round bales. And it seems to me a round bale weighs a little less than half a ton. So you don't want to try to roll one around yourself. Now in Farming Simulator, they'll just roll right down the hill. But from what I have observed, they flatten out enough at the bottom when they drop that they usually won't roll unless the hill is very steep. Now I have seen places where they would feed cattle in the pasture, say when there wasn't, it wasn't good grazing, but yet they were keeping them out on the pasture when the weather was not conducive to the grass growing. And they'd go up to the top of a hill and they would cut open the bale, and then they would use a tractor to give it a push start on the hill, and it would actually unwrap as it went down the hill, and then the cattle would eat it. There seems like there would be quite a bit of waste with that, but I guess it was an easy way of feeding the cattle in the winter. Now I haven't seen anything that I remember like that in more northern climes, but again, where I live, which is a temperate climate, that is done sometimes. Looks like we're almost done with the fertilization on this field. It's showing 651 of 671 waypoints have been completed. And what this is doing now, this is cutting across, and it's got just a couple of more runs over here, and it will be done. And we will too. What's interesting about this, it shows on here that it was going to go straight across there, and maybe it had the intelligence not to, because it might have gotten stuck. I think there was a fence there, and I think it might have gotten stuck on the fence. So this is quite a system called Courseplay, and it's designed and built as a collaboration between Waymo and Case. I guess it's good for us that we have Case equipment. And there is the end of that. Great. Well, I really appreciate your watching. You can like and subscribe if you would like to. Make any comments, put any comments that you have in the comments section. And I hope you have a blessed day.